Sam sat on the cold, hard sidewalk, leaning against the side of an old, run-down building. The early evening sun cast long shadows, but it did little to warm his thin, worn-out jacket. His hands were rough and calloused, clutching an empty coffee cup where passers-by occasionally dropped loose change. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in days, and his stomach growled quietly in protest. Yet for Sam, this was just another day in a life that had taken more from him than it had ever given. He glanced around the bustling city street, watching people hurry by. They wore expensive suits, carried fancy handbags, and rushed from one place to another, completely absorbed in their lives. To them, Sam was invisible, a fixture of the city they had learned to ignore. But Sam had grown used to it. Years of living on the streets had taught him to blend into the background, to expect nothing. As he watched the world pass by, a sudden glint caught his eye. Just a few feet in front of him, something lay on the ground, half hidden beneath the legs of pedestrians rushing past. Curiosity piqued, Sam pulled himself to his feet with a groan. His knees ached, but he shuffled forward and bent down to pick up the small object. It was a wallet. Sam looked around. No one seemed to be looking for it. People kept walking by, oblivious to his discovery. He opened the wallet and found it packed with cash. Hundreds of dollars, more money than he had seen in a very long time. His heart skipped a beat as he thumbed through the bills. But there was more. Tucked inside the leather folds were a few credit cards, an ID, and various other cards for high-end boutiques and restaurants. The ID revealed the wallet belonged to a woman named Claire. She looked to be in her 30s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a professional smile. Sam exhaled slowly. With all the money inside, this woman clearly wasn't hurting. She was probably a wealthy businesswoman, someone who wouldn't even notice the cash was gone for a while. Sam's first thought was simple. He could keep the money. No one would ever know. With a few $100s in his pocket, he could eat proper meals for weeks, maybe even find a place to stay for a few nights. It would be a small fortune for him, a way to escape the crushing weight of hunger and cold, at least for a little while. But as tempting as it was, something deep inside him pulled him in a different direction. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, a distant memory from better days. Always do the right thing, no matter how hard it is, Sam. Life has a way of coming full circle. He hadn't thought about those words in years, but today they came flooding back. Sam sighed, looking down at the wallet one more time. His stomach churned with hunger, but he knew what he had to do. The next morning, Sam made his way across town to the address listed on Claire's ID. It was an upscale apartment building in a part of the city Sam rarely visited. The streets here were clean, lined with trees and luxury cars parked in neat rows. Sam felt out of place, his ragged clothes and unkempt appearance attracting disapproving stares from the few people walking by. But he kept going, determined to do what was right. When he arrived at the building, the doorman eyed him suspiciously. Sam felt the familiar sting of judgment, but explained why he was there, holding up the wallet as proof. Reluctantly, the doorman allowed him inside, though he made it clear that Sam wasn't welcome to linger. Sam stepped into the grand lobby, the marble floors gleaming under the bright lights. The scent of expensive perfume and polished wood filled the air. It was a stark contrast to the world Sam had been living in for so long. He felt small and out of place, but he had come this far. There was no turning back now. At the reception desk, a young woman in a crisp uniform greeted him with a polite but cautious smile. "How can I help you, sir?" she asked, her eyes scanning his appearance. Sam held up the wallet. "I found this on the street yesterday. It belongs to someone named Claire. She lives here, right?" The receptionist glanced at the wallet, then back at Sam. There was a moment of hesitation before she nodded. "Yes, Ms. Claire lives here. I'll notify her. Please wait here." Sam waited, feeling the weight of his decision settle on his shoulders. He could have walked away with the money, but instead, here he was, in a place where he didn't belong, doing the right thing. Part of him wondered if it was worth it. Claire arrived a few minutes later, looking every bit as polished and put together as she had in her ID photo. She wore a tailored suit, and her blonde hair was styled perfectly. As she approached Sam, there was a flicker of surprise in her eyes when she saw him. "You found my wallet?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Sam nodded and handed it over without a word. Claire took it and quickly opened it, checking the contents. Her eyes widened as she realized nothing was missing, not the cash, not the cards. Everything was still there. I don't know what to say," she stammered, clearly shocked. Thank you so much." Sam shrugged. It was the right thing to do. Claire looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. She saw the worn-out clothes, the dirt on his hands, the tiredness in his eyes. It dawned on her that this man, who clearly had so little, had returned something that could have meant everything to him. "Why didn't you just keep the money?" she asked, unable to stop herself. Sam hesitated for a moment. "I thought about it," he admitted honestly. "But I couldn't. My mum always told me to do the right thing, no matter how hard it is." There was a long pause as Claire processed his words. She had spent her life in the fast lane, surrounded by wealth and power, always moving, always focused on herself. It had been years since anyone had done something so selfless for her. "I can't just let you walk away," she said finally. "Wait here." Claire disappeared back into the building, leaving Sam standing in the grand lobby, unsure of what to do. Moments later, she returned, holding an envelope in her hand. "I know you didn't do it for a reward," she said softly, "but I want to help you. Please take this." Sam looked down at the envelope, knowing what was inside. It was likely more money than he had seen in years. His instinct was to refuse, to walk away, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the hunger gnawing at his insides, or maybe it was the simple fact that for once someone was offering him kindness. Reluctantly, he accepted the envelope. "Thank you," he murmured. Claire smiled, a genuine smile that softened her usually stern features. "No, thank you. You've reminded me that there's still good in the world." Sam left the building, the envelope tucked into his pocket. He didn't open it until he was back on the familiar streets, far away from the luxury of Claire's world. When he finally did, his breath caught in his throat. Inside was not just a few bills, but enough money to change his life, a few $1,000s, enough to rent a small apartment, buy new clothes, and get back on his feet. But there was more. Tucked inside the envelope was a note. It was simple, but profound, and it brought tears to Sam's eyes as he read it. "Everyone deserves a second chance. Use this to rebuild your life. And when you're ready, come see me. There's always a place for good people like you in my company." In the weeks that followed, Sam did just that. With the money, he was able to find a place to stay, clean himself up, and start looking for work. True to her word, Claire reached out to him, offering him a job at her company. It wasn't anything glamorous, but it was honest work, something Sam hadn't had in a long time. As the months passed, Sam's life began to change. He was no longer the invisible man on the street. He had a purpose again, a future he could be proud of, and it all started with a simple act of kindness, the decision to return a lost wallet to its rightful owner. Sometimes life gives us a choice between what's easy and what's right. Sam chose the harder path, not knowing that it would lead to something greater than he could have imagined. We never know how a single act of kindness can ripple through the world, changing lives, including our own. If you enjoyed this story, YouTube thinks you'll like these stories, also.